Have you ever talked yourself out of something that could have completely changed your life? Maybe it was starting a business, applying for a promotion, speaking to someone you've admired for years, beginning a new relationship, or finally deciding to chase that dream that's been living quietly inside you for far too long. You were excited, you could almost feel it, you could almost taste it. Then that little voice arrived. You're probably not good enough. Someone else can do it better. What if you fail? What if people laugh? Maybe next year. And just like that, the dream disappeared. Not because someone stopped you, because you stopped yourself. Think about that for a moment. How many opportunities have you lost because of a conversation that only ever happened inside your own mind? Now, here's an even bigger question. What if I told you that the voice you've trusted for most of your life isn't actually telling you the truth? Oh no, not because it's trying to hurt you, not because it's your enemy, but because it's simply repeating what it has learned. That one understanding completely changed the direction of my life, because once I understood it, I stopped trying to change my circumstances and started changing the person creating those circumstances. And everything began to change. Hey, I'm John Williams, and welcome to the John Williams Global Channel. Every week here we explore timeless principles of personal development, self-image, success manifestation, and human potential. Not to motivate you for a few hours, but to help you create lasting transformation. Because I honestly believe the quality of your life will never consistently rise above the picture you hold of yourself. Change that picture and eventually change your life. So wherever you're watching this from, I'd like you to give me your full attention, because today's conversation isn't really about your thoughts. It's about your freedom. You see, most people, they spend their lives trying to change what's happening around them. They want more money, a better job, a different relationship, better health, more confidence, a nicer home, a successful business. But very few people stop to ask one simple question. Who's the person trying to create all of those things? Because after studying personal development for decades, after working with people from all walks of life, I've realized something. If the person doesn't change, the circumstances really do. You can change jobs, you can move to another city, start another business, begin another relationship, but sooner or later, you'll usually recreate the same patterns. Why? Because wherever you go, there you are. You take one person with you, yourself. And that's why today's conversation isn't really about changing your life. It's about changing the person who created it. Now, I'd like you to imagine something. Imagine someone followed you everywhere for the next 7 days. They criticized every decision you made. They reminded you about every mistake you ever made. They laughed every time you had a dream. They constantly told you, you're too old, or you're too young, or you're not clever enough, or you'll never make it. How long would you allow that person to stay in your life? I would imagine probably not very long. But yet millions of people wake up in the morning and allow exactly that conversation to continue inside their own minds. Not for a day, not for a week, sometimes for decades. And eventually they mistake that voice for themselves. That is the hidden problem. Not the economy, not your age, not your circumstances. The hidden problem is believing every thought that enters your mind. And today, I'd like to challenge that belief, because one of the most liberating discoveries you'll ever make is this. You're not your thoughts. You are the thinker of your thoughts. Think about that for a moment. You're not your thoughts. You are the thinker of your thoughts. Those two ideas are completely different. One leaves you powerless. The other gives you choice. And choice will change everything. Let me show you what I mean. Imagine somebody gave you a voice recorder on the day that you were actually born. From the very first day, every opinion, every criticism, every compliment, every emotional experience was quietly being recorded. As a small child, you didn't question any of it. You couldn't. If someone important said, you're shy, you believed it. If someone said, you're not very academic, you believed it. If someone laughed when you made a mistake, part of that experience was recorded. None of it was your fault. It was simply how your mind learns. You see, children absorb information long before they develop the ability to even evaluate it. Your subconscious mind works in exactly the same way. It records, it stores. Then, years later, it simply presses play. Here's what's fascinating, Your subconscious isn't asking, is this true? It's just asking, is this familiar? Think about that. That's a completely different question. Most people don't live according to what's true. They live according to what's familiar, even when familiar is painful. Have you ever noticed that people stay in jobs they dislike, relationships that make them really unhappy, or habits they know are damaging them? Why is that? Because familiar feels safe, not because it's good, because it's familiar. I've come to think of this as the old recording. And here's the good news though. It's only a recording. It's not your identity. It's not your potential. And it's certainly not your future. It's simply yesterday being replayed today. The problem is, if yesterday keeps replaying today, today eventually becomes tomorrow. That's why so many people feel trapped. They're not living from possibility. They're living from repetition. Now, let's connect this to something you've probably heard me speak about before. Your self-image, your identity, the picture you actually hold of yourself. I often compare it to the thermostat in your home. You can turn the heating off for a while. The room gets warmer. But once it reaches the temperature programmed into the thermostat, everything settles back to where it started. Your self-image works in very much the same way. You might attend, a motivational seminar, read an inspiring book, or watch a great YouTube video. Feel incredibly motivated for a few days. But if your internal identity still says, I'm not successful, I'm not worthy, I'm not confident, your subconscious quietly works to bring your life back into alignment with that picture. Not because it's trying to stop you, but because consistency is one of its primary functions. That's why motivation fades, but identity lasts. And that's why lasting change is never about trying harder. It's about becoming someone different. And that's one of the greatest lessons I've learned over the years. You don't create a different future by constantly fighting your past. You create a different future by creating a different picture of yourself. Because when your identity changes, your decisions begin changing. And when your decisions change, your actions change. And when your actions change, your results begin changing. And that's why awareness always comes first. Because you can't change what you don't first become aware of. And perhaps the greatest awareness of all is realizing that the voice that you've been listening to for years isn't your destiny. It's simply an old recording. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, this all makes sense, but how do I actually change that old recording? And that's a great question, because understanding the problem is only the beginning. Real transformation really begins when understanding becomes action. You see, people don't change because they hear a great idea. People change when they begin seeing themselves differently. That's exactly what happened in my own life. Now, many of you know that I started my career as a professional musician. In fact, I was earning from the age of 13, standing on stage, playing in front of audiences, working with some of the most incredible artists over the years. Most people would have probably looked at me and thought, wow, he's confident. But what they didn't see was the conversation taking place inside my own head. Like so many people, I questioned myself all the time. I doubted myself. I wondered whether I was good enough. And looking back now, I realized something. Confidence didn't come first. Action came first. Confidence was built one performance at a time. Later, when I moved from being a professional musician to just a part-time one and moved into business, I experienced exactly the same thing. Once again, I found myself stepping into unfamiliar territory. And once again, that old recording started playing. What if you fail? What if people say no? What if you're not good enough? Have you ever noticed that the old recording always seems to get louder whenever you're about to grow? Think about that. I mean, every major decision in life usually comes with uncertainty. It may be starting a business, changing careers, walking into a meeting, asking someone out, or speaking in public. Oh God, yeah. Almost always the voice appears. For years I thought something was wrong with me. Now I understand something completely different. That voice wasn't trying to predict my future. It was trying to protect my past. And that's a huge difference. It was trying to keep me where everything felt familiar, safe, predictable, comfortable. But here's the problem. Nothing extraordinary has ever been created inside a comfort zone. Everything worthwhile requires us to become someone we've never been before. That's why personal growth feels uncomfortable most of the time. You're asking your subconscious to accept a new identity. You're asking it to replace an old recording with a completely new one. Now, here's the wonderful news though. That can be done. Not overnight, but it can absolutely be done. Over weeks, months, over years. I've discovered a very simple process that has helped me and helped many of people I've worked with. Whenever you catch that old recording beginning to play, I want you to remember 4 simple words. Pause, question, replace, repeat. Let's look at them. First, pause. Don't react. Don't immediately believe the thought. Simply just notice it. Become aware. Remember, awareness is where transformation begins. The second one, question. Ask yourself, is this actually true or is this simply familiar? That one question changes everything because suddenly you're no longer trapped inside that thought. You're actually observing it. Third is replace. Choose a better thought, not an unrealistic one, not pretending everything is perfect. Choose a thought that moves you towards the person you're becoming. Instead of, I'll probably fail, try, I'll learn something valuable, whatever happens. And instead of, I'm not confident, try, I'm becoming more confident every day. Can you feel the difference? One thought closes the door, the other opens it. Finally, repeat. Because repetition built the old recording, repetition also builds the new one. Every time you choose a better thought, you're laying another brick in the foundation of your future identity. Remember, you don't become confident because you say one affirmation. You become confident because you repeatedly think, speak, and act like a confident person. Until one day, that's simply who you are. Think about how children learn. They don't become fluent, say, in a language overnight. They hear words again and again and again, and eventually those words become just natural for them. The subconscious learns exactly the same way, through repetition. That's why I want you to stop fighting your mind and start educating it. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you truly love. Encourage yourself, challenge yourself, believe in yourself, because whether you realize it or not, you're actually listening. Every single day, every word you speak to yourself is shaping the person you're becoming. Now, let me ask you something. If the person you'll become 5 years from today walked into this room right now, what advice would they give you? Would they tell you to keep doubting yourself? Would they tell you to wait another year? Or would they tell you to keep playing small? Or would they smile, look at you in the eye and simply say, it's time? I think we both know the answer because deep down, you've always known you're capable of more. You didn't click on this video by accident. Part of you already knows there's another version of you waiting to emerge. My job today is simply to remind you that it's possible because I genuinely believe that it is. And more importantly, I believe it's possible for you. So before we finish, I'd like to ask you to do something, not for me, but for yourself. For the next 7 days, I want you to become the observer of your own mind. Not the judge, not the critic, just the observer. Throughout each day, pay attention to the conversations you're having with yourself. Notice what happens when something goes wrong. Notice what happens when someone compliments you. Notice what happens when an opportunity presents itself. And then notice what happens when you make a mistake. Don't try to change anything at first. Simply just notice it. Because awareness is always the beginning of transformation. Then every evening before you go to bed, I'd like you to spend just 5 minutes answering 3 simple questions. Number 1, what thoughts serve me today? Which thoughts encouraged me? Which thoughts gave me confidence? Which thoughts helped me move forward? And celebrate those thoughts, strengthen them. They're helping build your future. Number 2 would be, what thoughts held me back today? Where did I doubt myself? Where did fear make the decision instead of me? Don't criticize yourself. Don't feel guilty. Simply just notice it. Remember, you cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. And finally, question number 3. This is maybe the most important question of all. Who do I choose to become tomorrow? Notice I didn't ask, what do I want tomorrow? I asked, who do I choose to become? Because when identity changes, everything begins to change. If tomorrow you decide to become a more confident person, how would that person speak? How would they stand? How would they respond to disappointment? How would they think? How would they treat themselves? Tomorrow morning, start becoming that person. It's not going to happen all at once. Just one thought at a time. One conversation at a time. One decision at a time. Because extraordinary lives are never built in one giant leap. They're built through thousands of small decisions that nobody else ever sees. That's how confidence is built. That's how self-image changes. That's how lives change. Now, before we finish, I'd like you to imagine something. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and just for one day, that old recording never played. Imagine beginning the day without hearing, "I'm not good enough. I'll probably fail at this. I'm too old. It's too late." Instead, imagine hearing, "I'm learning. I'm growing. I'm becoming. I'm capable." How differently would you walk? How differently would you speak? How differently would you show up for your family, for your business, for your future? You see, your life doesn't suddenly change because the world changes. Your life changes because you change. And when you change, your world begins changing with you. That's why I believe one of the greatest gifts that you can ever give yourself is learning to become the leader of your own mind. Not because you'll never have another negative thought, because you will. We all do, believe me. But because you'll finally understand that just because a thought appears, it doesn't mean it deserves your belief. Remember this, you are not your thoughts, you are the thinker of your thoughts. And the thinker always has a choice. I want to leave you with one final image. Imagine standing at the foot of a mountain, and at the top of that mountain is the life that you've always dreamt of. Greater confidence, better health, financial freedom, meaningful relationships, peace of mind, purpose, everything you've ever wanted. And as you stand there, the old recording begins to play. It says, "It's too difficult. I'll never make it. People like me don't achieve things like that." Now imagine another person standing beside you. They hear exactly the same voice, exactly the same doubts, exactly the same fears. But instead of believing them, they smile. They recognize the old recording. And they quietly say, "Thank you, but you're no longer writing my story." Then they take one step, just the one. The mountain hasn't changed, the challenge hasn't changed, the fear hasn't disappeared. But something has changed. The person climbing the mountain. And that's where transformation begins. Not when life becomes easier, but when you become stronger. Not when fear disappears, but when courage becomes louder than fear. Not when the world finally believes in you, but when you finally begin believing in yourself. Now here's what I'd like you to remember. After today's masterclass, you weren't born doubting yourself. You learned it, which means you can all learn it. The voice inside your head, it's not your destiny. It's simply an old recording. And old recordings, believe me, they can be replaced. Maybe, just maybe, the person you've been searching for has been inside you all along, just waiting for you to believe in them. Think about that for a moment. If today's message has resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Leave me a comment below and tell me this. What's one old recording you're choosing to let go of today? I genuinely love to read your answers. And if you know someone who constantly doubts themselves, share this video with them. It might be exactly the conversation they need to hear. If you've enjoyed today's masterclass, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel. Every week we explore practical principles that help you strengthen your mindset, transform your self-image, and create lasting change from the inside out. And if you'd like to continue the journey, I've created a collection of the no-cost resources to help you take the next step. You'll find a link in my resource page on my website, johnwilliamsglobal.com/resources, and in the description below. They're actually designed to help you build confidence, program limiting beliefs, and continue becoming the person you're capable of becoming. And if you're ready to go even deeper and invest in yourself, I'd love to invite you to explore my magnetic manifestation program, because inside we go far beyond today's conversation. You'll learn how to reprogram your subconscious mind, transform your identity, and align your thinking, emotions, and actions with the life you truly want to create. I'd love to welcome you inside. So let me leave you with one final thought. Awareness creates transformation. The moment you become aware, you can choose. The moment you choose, you begin to change. And when you change, your life changes with you. I'm John Williams. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Until next time, keep growing, keep believing, and become the person you were born to be. And remember that your vision, your beliefs, and your emotions are shaping your future right now. Choose wisely, live abundantly, keep dreaming big, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.